Okay, we're here today for a meeting of the Newmarket Building Committee. It's December 18th, 2018. We'll begin our meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we have an agenda before us. Our first thing on our agenda is approval of minutes from the last meeting, and those are in your packet. And I would just request a motion from someone who was here at the last meeting to approve those minutes.
I will motion to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments, additions on the minutes? If none, I'd like to take a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Those are approved. On to our second item. Greg, would you mind giving us a project update, please?
Sure, happy to. Well, if anybody goes by, you can see there's been quite a bit of work. Actually, this last week, you can go by the high school on the west side and see all the steel that was put up, which looks great. We've been moving along quite well. I'm quite happy with the progress. We did talk about last meeting about paving. We were able to get the paving done at the elementary school around the back, or at least the binder coat. Unfortunately, the weather did not play well, so we couldn't get that done at the high school, but it will not impact the operations or going forth at this time. We're actually looking at turning over areas in the elementary school at the end of January, beginning of February. So the new gymnasium will be actually up and running and accessible and being able to be used. Excuse me. We did talk about in this report that we've had some boiler failures on our temporary boiler, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows we have that up and running. We did have a small hiccup, but it was quickly fixed, and it's been running fine ever since. We have a couple of design elements that are being worked up for pricing right now, and the project areas that are still being worked on, that we're still running into areas of unsuitable materials. As we mentioned prior, the back of the high school where the new subsurface drainage or the stormwater drainage system is, we're running into some more unsuitable materials there, and we're hoping that we won't find many in front of the elementary school, but that's the only other area that we really have a potential impact. As I said, I think we're moving along quite well, and don't have any major updates and any issues really to bring forward.
Greg, can you give just on the unsuitables, can you give the committee sort of an idea of volume and timing of potential?
So at the high
estimate?
school right now, they're excavating the area where our stormwater system out behind the high school is going, and we're looking at approximately about 100 cubic yards of material that's going to be removed and not used. So we do have that impact. But it's not disastrous, given that it's not a high quantity of material that has to be changed out. The elementary school, we won't actually know the full scope of that if there's anything we have to do until we actually excavate next next summer in front of the elementary. But that's where we're at with those.
And the 100 yards is somewhere around $15 a yard, is that right?
15 to 20-ish.
So it's 15 to 20,000.
Approximately. The final yardage is still to be determined, but yes.
Quick question, probably more to Sean than you. If the gym in the elementary school is going to be ready in January, February, is there some event that you're thinking about to christen the gym?
I've been putting that to thought and I haven't got it all worked out, yes,
Okay,
but
well, if
we
you
have
can-
to have something on that line, yes.
If you do, can you give the committee some
Oh,
advance
definitely.
notice?
Yep, definitely.
I think people will be very much surprised at the size of the new gym compared to what we've been working out of. it's gonna be very nice.
Pleasantly surprised. I know firsthand, I coach my son's 3rd and 4th grade basketball team, and it's like playing in a closet right now, so. I
Correct.
hope maybe they'll have the opportunity to play in the new gym before
Well, I
the
think
season.
that's one of the real, you know,
Yeah.
feel-good type of things that we're
Yeah.
doing, and we should celebrate that.
Definitely.
It will be very much different than what you have been used to, and it's actually come together quite well. It's been painted in there now. Our Tectum soundboards are all installed. The lighting's in, so it's real close.
So we'll have another meeting, I think, in between now and the time that opens in January, so maybe at the next meeting we could,
I'll draft
Have-
for you guys ready.
yeah.
Yeah, what's the size difference between the new gym and the one
I
in the
think the
senior
old gym
junior
was
center?
like 2,800 square feet, and this is 7,000.
Yeah, and does that compare reasonably to the high school gym?
It's a little smaller than the high school gym. It's sometimes commonly referred to as a middle school or junior high gym. It's not quite as large as a full high school gym, but it's let's put it this way, if you took the existing gym, you could put 3 over inside of that, and not to mention the fact that you have full height ceilings in there. So it will look very much different.
Great.
Remind me what we did about seating in there. What, is there any bleachers or any kind of?
At this time,
Spectator area.
bleachers, which was an alternate, have not been purchased. That is one of those items that we'll have to look at as we get through this process. They can be installed at a later date.
And do I remember it was like 3-row bleachers? There were a small version
Correct.
of a bleacher.
Correct, yes. They were basically, the original design was a 2-step bleacher. And when we got looking at it to try to figure out if we go to a 3-step, the amount of protrusion out into the playing or towards the playing area is really almost exactly the same. So it would be advantageous if we go that way to look at those 3 tiers.
So any other questions on project updates or status of any of?
Just
Are we gonna talk about cafeteria, so the elementary school cafeteria?
You mean what's going on right now?
Yeah, just,
Well, that part of that project is kind of outside of the building committee, but I guess I can give you an update. We're working towards creating a different serving area because of line failures and grease trap failures in the actual existing kitchen, so that we can shut that off and worked out details on how to work between the 2 schools and still serve appropriate lunches and breakfast for our students. The plan right now is, because of that, it's actually going to allow us to move up the opening date of our new kitchen. So we are now projecting that the new kitchen will be up and open at the end of April, after school vacation break. So it does move that up in the schedule, which will give us access to it at a sooner date. It comes down to an unfortunate situation, and I guess you could look at it, part of it is good timing for the fact that we get to build the new kitchen sooner. Bad timing because there's never a good time for that.
and you said it wasn't totally, I know some of it is outside the scope of this project, but can you give us more information about that, or what piece?
Well,
Redoing that kitchen was part of the project.
The whole,
but-
redoing the whole kitchen itself is all part of the project
Yeah.
itself, and that is still going to go exactly the way it was planned. The lines that are all there were all gonna be taken out. The grease trap and everything were gonna be demoed. So, that is still moving forward. It's moving sooner forward than later. The work that we're doing for the temporary serving line is to create serving lines, freezers, coolers, dry storage areas, to allow for food to be served. We've already met with the state. The state has given the approval to the design and plan. And we will, so that's kind of what we're doing with that. And then trying to make it so that anything that we use or buy to put into that temporary kitchen, for instance, our hot boxes are the hot boxes we've purchased as through the project, so I'm not buying equipment that I'm gonna have to deal with after. The only equipment we're gonna have really that we're gonna buy that is outside of that is I got a 2-door freezer, but I was able to purchase one used at a very reasonable price, and a two-door cooler, which is also used, that I purchased at a very reasonable price. So, trying to not spend a lot of money and then end up with a lot of equipment that we can't use or don't have a need for. As the gym opens, one of the things that will happen is we'll be able to expand into what was the old gym area.
Right.
So we'll be able to open up the seating area and open up some of that serving area a little bit better to give some more room or flow of students through the area. So there is an advantage with some of these things coming online a little sooner than we planned.
Greg, and the watering, the water table issue, can you explain that issue to the committee?
So that property is pretty flat. The water table is extremely high there. And so one of the things that has been identified is that water table on average runs 1.5 to 2 feet below the existing surface, which is not deep at all. One of the things that it's created for problems is when we get a lot of rain, the water has to go someplace. And what it has been doing is pushing up around the grease trap areas and around floor drains under hydraulic pressure and causing some of those water areas to leak. It also infiltrates our sewer line. So we really found that out when we were dealing with the plug sewer. We had everything off. Nothing was running in the school, water was shut down, and we still had water coming out the drain lines. Well, we realized that we're picking up groundwater that's seeping into these different areas in lines such as floor drains and that grease trap, which was failed, and dumping down into the line. So we're looking at how do we better manage that. We had discussions with our contractor today. We're trying to work with our engineers to come up with a plan to de-water that area, or especially the kitchen area, and create a way to actually control the water out to a storm drain so that we can kind of alleviate some of that water issue or that high water table that's at the property or at that area.
Okay, so the grease trap, how much, I'm gonna get myself in the weeds here, but how much of the grease trap issue is connected to the other sewer issue that we're having that I know is not part of the scope of this project?
So the grease trap itself, the products that it's supposed to catch were not getting caught. So it does affect our line that is going to be replaced.
Okay.
Because the grease, instead of getting trapped in where it's supposed to be, was heading down because it went through the overflows that are built into the system because it was plugged.
Okay.
So that does bring grease products into that line, and we have seen that. You've probably heard us talk about the cammering where we've seen grease in the line. We have been jetting the line regularly now, so some of that is decreasing. We've now obviously shut those lines off, so we're not dumping any more into that line. So it can play a role. There's also a caustic effect to some of that. So if you actually, one of the other reasons we shut that down was because the line coming into the grease trap, there's no bottom left of the pipe. So it's been leaching into the soil. And that caustic level of some of that grease will eat away that cast iron.
So Greg, it's also helpful for folks to know that the design going in is different in terms of the grease trap and the sewer than is existing. Things have improved since 1987, and
I don't know about
a little
that.
bit. Some aspects
I'm
have
joking.
improved.
Yeah, we're going, one of the big things that is changing is our grease trap is actually exterior to the building and considerably larger. I believe the elementary is 1,000-gallon capacity tank. In additional to that, we also have traps that are inside of the building to trap, it's a food trap, so that we're not dumping those products into the grease trap and plugging those systems. So there's much better ways now to manage those products from exiting our building.
So hopefully we don't have these issues going forward. So anything else?
Yeah, Greg, could you, on page 2 of the project summary report for the month ending 2018, there's a table that talks about contingency. And could you just talk to us about that remaining balance of 1451, what is that?
That's actually not contingency money. That's money remaining in the contract that is unaccounted for right now. And I caution how I'm wording that. The money that you see there, that 1.451 million, there is a lot of that money that's actually will be encumbered for the project. Such as, what's not in here is the kitchen equipment, 400,000 right there. That's not accounted in that number yet because we hadn't encumbered it in the system. So that's where that number comes. So that contains unencumbered FF&E, owner's costs, contingency monies, things like that we still have that we haven't set to a hard encumbrance in our financials. So that's where those numbers lie.
But for the committee, in order for the committee to understand what's left in FF&E, school contingency, project contingency.
So right now-
What would the number be?
Right now, what you have in contingency fees and things that have been updated since in this, remember this is a November thing. If you look at the contingency monies for the contract, you'll see 1.3 million. Are you talking about that line?
I'm talking about, I don't include the contractor's number in there, just include our.
If we look at what's projected on our contingency and project that we still have to book, and to finish this project, we have about 318,000 uncommitted, and in that uncommitted, or excuse me, in the committed part of it, we do have some allowances such as additional money for just change orders, unsuitable materials, some of the projects that we know we have to do, sewer line, administrative office at the elementary school, are all within that. But if you look at the bottom line, it's about 318,000 that's sitting there that is not earmarked for anything at this time.
So people can follow along, if we're on the last page, the number you're talking about, Greg, is the one that's really offset under the included in contingency wording.
Which there is 289,000.
Yeah.
I should word that.
Right.
We were able to get some projects come in a little bit better, and that number's now moved up to 318.
Instead of
Instead of
289,
so we're actually on the
454.
positive side.
Yeah.
When this report was created, which is again the beginning of the month, it was 289. Right now, it's running about 318 because we had a few projects come in under budget. We moved some projects out of contingencies that we didn't need to. Some projects were covered under Ekman's contingencies, so we were able to adjust some of those numbers out.
If we look at that 318,
Which you don't have on this report, and I
right,
apologize.
no, I understand, but
going
next
by
to
my
the
newest
289,
report.
it's moved up. If we go back to the 1,451 remaining balance, you're saying the 318 is a reasonably decent number out of the 1,451 as well?
That 318 is out of the $38 million.
Right, okay.
It's tight, because there are unknowns that we have still out there. For instance, I just talked about unsuitable materials. We talked about the elementary sewer. I carried 50,000. We don't have a number for that yet. It could come in at 100,000. I don't know, but I put a placeholder in there for 50,000. The elementary office, I think that number is going to be a good number. So those are numbers that we are projecting costs to. But like I said, until we actually get some hard numbers from our contractor, for instance, the elementary sewer, that bottom number is going to fluctuate.
It's a tight number in all events, but we should also realize under undefined change orders, I mean, these are just stuff you don't even have, it's just a huge placeholder, but it's
Yep.
$158,000 for just things we don't even know are gonna come up yet.
Right, but the 318 is we're less than 1% at this point.
I think
Right, I think logically, probably. I think Eric Boderman might have mentioned this at a couple of meetings ago, that undefined change order
just a
category
number.
might be better in the bottom line, so you would add that to the 318, and that's sort of a better idea of what we have unencumbered.
Correct.
Yeah.
There is no encumbrance to that number. It's a number that I put in there as a placeholder to give an idea of what we could be running. And keep in mind, we haven't started the big remodeling
So about
project yet.
475.
Yeah, and we haven't started the remodeling project at the high school
Yeah.
yet.
Right.
But to balance the comment that you just made, the $158,000 of undefined change orders is not an arbitrary number. It's a number that you've gone through and scoped out as possible issues.
Possible issues, yep.
Right. So from this committee's standpoint, we started off with $1,381,000, and we've got $94,000 left. And for project contingency,
94?
94,774,
Well, I'm not sure where you're getting that at.
right here. Total contingency was 1.3, and we've got a balance of $94,000 left. Is that right, Greg?
I'm not sure what you're probably you're looking at the brand new report and,
Yeah, the one I got this morning.
yeah, as I mentioned earlier today when we lived, it's real time, not the November report. So the November report shows 67,469.
Right.
The one you're referring to is the latest and greatest, but it's the December report. It will be in our December report, not in the November, and we're reviewing the November right now, so the November report, we're at 67,469 in contingency funds that are, left.
And am I correct? That's the number that this building committee should be focusing on? Because as we talk about ad alternatives and so forth, you can almost read this report and say we've got $1 million something left. We don't.
No, you don't.
We've got $70,000 left. 74. So if this,
And as you know, and as we've gone through this project, and John DeLoyer is here and has said several times as we go through this, we don't have a lot of money for any kind of alternates at this point. And are there things that, we can look at as we get near to the end of the project? Of course, and if there's money and funds left there. And remember, we still have the interest we're gaining on the funds that we took through
through the bond.
CDs, and I believe that's on the report, and right now it's, I think $211,464. That is in interest only. That does require voter approval to use, but it is interest that we have gained on the funds that we took from the bond.
And impact fees as well. I forget what that number was. It was some,
Yeah, and then there was something else.
200.
Was it 212? I'm sorry, I don't remember that number. It's slightly over 200.
Yeah, so nothing's changed. We're still running a tight budget. Ad alternates at the moment are not wise.
No, I think once,
Nothing's changed.
like I said, we haven't hit the big remodeling part of the high school. And that's where you do have a tendency to run into those things that you just don't know about. Because they're inside of walls, you can't see it. Added asbestos, as you know, we had a change order because of a structural change we had to do at the stage for the high school. That was unknown because until they took the block down, we didn't know how it wasn't shown how it was supported because you couldn't see it. And so we had to do some additional steel to re-support that area. So those are the kind of things we still have to be mindful.
Two things. One, we spoke last month about at least raising the issue, saying if we're gonna find more Waldos as we go along, which is likely, do we start to at least need to think about if we go over budget, or what priority of things we had hoped to get, maybe we need to think about delaying. And I know we're not there yet, and I know last month we ended up saying that maybe 2 more months away, but I just don't want to lose sight of the fact that it seems it's heading in one direction. It may not be significant, but more than likely, we should need to discuss at some point, how do we pare back on the original other is, if there is a vote required on the extra interest, is that gonna be raised in March, as an item?
I believe it is.
I don't know if
Lisa
the
may
board
be
has
able to.
decided on that yet. The board has to make a decision on that. School board.
Yeah, my only suggestion is if that card needs to be played, it's probably best being played this March than it is waiting for a special meeting or next March, doing it in advance.
I think on your first point, and John can address it again, but I think his suggestion was we wait until the first quarter to start thinking about things that we might omit. Is that correct, John?
You also see that it's leveled off a little bit. Some of the expenses, some of the ground soils, the different things we were finding is leveled off. And as you've looked at the last couple months, even the new report's going to show you went in the right direction a little bit. So it's still a little early about worrying about what we're going to lose. We're all working very hard to make sure we
And I'm not
don't.
suggesting we are, but I come from the part of hoping for the best and planning for the worst, and I
Yep.
just don't wanna end up.
But we
waking
can
up
have
in a
those
panic
discussions
and
as the
having
winter
to do
goes
something.
along.
Sounds like there'll be time for that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not right this second, but we will have to deal with things as we go forward. There
And-
will be things that are found.
And Al's preview shows that we're doing better on the contingency through December.
Yeah,
So-
we gained,
So
yeah, we
things are
gained,
conservatively going
I
well.
think, $24,000.
Do we have a guesstimate again on the interest that we would end up,
We're hoping by the end, trying to get it up to 500,000, but I don't know. Market's changing a bit,
yeah,
so I just reinvested some at 2.2% interest. On $1 million, that gets you a little bit, but it takes time to grow that.
certainly better
I would
than
love
the
it to
10
be that
basis
high.
points that
I'm
banks are stuck
trying to be as aggressive as I can without risking
Yeah,
any
no, I understand.
interest. Because if I don't plan it right and need the cash, then I lose the interest that I would have earned. So,
Thank you.
just today I had to look at that, so.
Okay, so we were on B, project updates. We strayed a little into financials. Anything more on project updates? Anybody have any questions? Where we're at? What's coming up in the next month? Okay. So I guess we may have covered it already, but let's go to C, monthly report and the financial update. Greg, in addition to what we've already talked about, do you have anything else you'd like to highlight?
No, I think we've covered, pretty much most of it. Again, you know, we do talk about some of those things that we're still working on, but, for the most part, things are moving ahead. And I think we just talked a lot about the financial, aspect of it. As I mentioned, right now we're showing a undefined amount of about 289,000, which actually moves up in the December report, which I've just been working on, to about 316. And as you mentioned, Mike, we do have an undefined change order of about 158, and we have an unsuitable materials of 102. So anything that come in under those are just adds to the bottom line of what funds we may have available. So, overall, I think we're targeting pretty well, given everything financially.
Okay. Any questions on finances?
Just a quick question, the additional asbestos, is that high school?
That is high school, there is
That's-
no asbestos
yeah.
at the elementary school. Clean building.
Excellent.
Actually, it was built, when it was built, asbestos products were used.
Okay, so the last section is the review of the, we've kind of addressed this in advance, but review of project alternates. What-
Excuse me,
Yeah.
1 second.
Yep.
That 102 was the unsuitable materials,
That's
that's a placeholder?
a placeholder.
Yeah, thank you.
Like I said, I know we have some at the high school. I don't know what we're gonna end up with at the elementary for that front area. So I know that there's potential costs there, so it's a good idea to put a placeholder, right? You know.
I think that's a wise choice in that area.
Thank you.
I don't don't think we're winning that many of the placeholder bets, are we?
Well, if you look at it that way.
Well,
I don't know if I'd go to win,
You're
lose.
putting in good conservative estimates, so that's,
I'm not sure what to say on the alternate stuff at this point. I'm not sure that we have any alternates that we can review or have available to us at this particular
Okay.
time.
let's keep the list available.
Yes, it's always good to have. If there's nothing else, let's adjourn. Any other questions?
I guess I have one, sorry.
Yep.
And I don't know, I've struggled with whether or not this is for the purview of this group, but, the current bus loop in front of the junior-senior high school, which I think is posted right now as authorized vehicles only, and there's been some communication about not parent drivers. Will it always be that way? And my question specifically pertains to, I attended an event there this past week and was traveling with someone with limited mobility, and trying to pick up and drop off that person without using that bus loop was impossible. I mean, we used it, but like I felt like I was doing something bad. So outing myself
Kind
in
of feels
public
good to
here.
use.
The signage
Yeah.
is required by our DOT permitting,
Okay.
as only authorized vehicles.
Yeah.
I certainly understand what you're saying there. I truly do. We will have, at the end of this project, which we don't currently have because there's a boiler sitting on top of it, there will be ADA parking spaces at the east end of the property, which commute directly to the walkway. So somebody with a needs or has a placard can park there and basically go right into the school.
And so, per DOT, there's no way to change that loop to, bus. I've been to a lot of other schools where it's like, buses only between, the earliest bus drop-off and the latest bus pickup, but then it's anyone
Right
other
now,
way.
I can tell you based on the task that we went through to get the permitting for that, that we talked about that, and
Okay.
that was not an option that they gave us at that time. I would say that, once the project's complete, we could probably try to readdress it with them to see if they have an interest in allowing for that, but at this time, the conditions of the permit say no.
Okay. I just think it's something that we might want to think about, or, see what we can do in the future, just for events such as that, when you get an event, when you get a gajillion grandparents or whatever.
Well, they
there,
will
that-
have the
that-
ADA
yeah.
parking on the end there, and keep in mind, there's also, in this project, there's
Drop off.
parking down the west side and across part of the back of the building that will have also parking.
Right.
So there is other parking that is yet to be constructed.
And there's an entrance on that side as well,
There
so
is.
there'll be a drop-off, where the
Right.
drop-off used to be, the parent drop-off used to be, if I remember correctly, there will also be an entrance on that particular side, so you'll
Correct.
have
We have the
very
event
close
entrance.
drop-off.
Drop off, yeah.
When is that gonna be completed?
That, I would say completed, March, April of 2020 when the whole job's completed. But hopefully we'll have access to that parking maybe the end of the summer. Again, we couldn't get in paving, so,
Yeah, the only reason I raise it is I recognize that if there is such a stringent permit that you can't have exceptions, but if we have a longer-term solution, but it's not gonna be here for a year, I don't know if there's any process we can speak to somebody about, registering in advance with the office for a day pass or something that will allow something between now and a year and a half from now, people with handicaps or special situations to be able to use that without feeling poorly.
I certainly understand. What I can say is based on our DOT permit that we obtained, and the requirements that they had within our DOT permit. If everybody remembers, part of the DOT permit is I had to take down the crosswalk lights.
Right.
And that took 4 to 5 months to be able to get them to give me the okay to put it back.
Right, but the
So-
permit is an end state, is it not? It's saying we're permitted to go and put all this construction in, and then once it's in, then we're gonna have this as a bus lane only.
It is
My-
a bus and it's a bus lane, and right now they have given us the okay to use it for deliveries because we don't have any other place to deliver to.
Right,
That
and
is
I'm
all they've
saying,
given us approval for.
But why wouldn't they give, if they're gonna give delivery access, you can't have handicap?
Because it's intermittent. It's not, somebody's not parking there. And I certainly understand dropping someone off there is not bad. I can certainly ask the District Six
I think it's,
rep and see if they have any
well,
interest.
a couple,
or would,
couple things. I
wait for it.
think,
I would hope that we would ask, 'cause
Yeah.
we're talking 18 months.
yeah, and,
I can
You know, they're-
certainly ask the person I deal with
Their
at
job
District
is to
Six.
make it as difficult as possible
Right.
to, so that you don't even think about asking for things that people need on a regular basis.
Well, might I suggest if, they do not, that we think of a short-term drop-off, a different door or something that will assist people for
Personally,
a major event.
I don't know if that's even feasible right now, because
So
there's
there
only
isn't-
that
there
one,
isn't
that
any.
one,
So
that
it's
one
just
end.
that one, you can't get to any
No.
other.
You can't get
I
to
thought
that.
Not,
So-
not really, but
Looks like a-
can we leave it like
Yes.
this? I know that Principal Mazzoni
Google.
spoke of this at I don't know if it was at last meeting here or at another recent meeting of the school board or something, and I believe Meredith spoke about something as well. They know more about it, I think, than we do. I'll bring that up. We have a meeting this
Please.
Thursday, Ann.
Yep.
But I agree, I mean, it's 18 months, and you've got some people
Got a lot
where,
of events.
they're not necessarily gonna park, but like you did, Ann.
Yeah.
If they literally can't walk across the street, I mean, let's make sure we get a good solid answer to that question, so we're not, excluding.
yeah, and most importantly, at least for drop-off. You know,
Yeah.
I can understand the not parking
Right.
and blocking and stuff.
And I can certainly understand that also. I will pose the question to Jim Hewitt at the District Six office. I'll try to send that out tomorrow, and see if he responds.
That'd be great.
Yeah, make it clear that we're not intending to have people park there. That would just be if they could.
After school, outside of school
Generally,
hours
there's like
event.
a 15-minute
Yeah.
parking.
The other thing, we've been
sequences.
fairly fortunate that we haven't had a lot of frozen snow precipitation, so that'll raise a whole. Yeah. We've had plenty of rain.
Oh my God, it beat the out of us,
Yeah.
November.
Yeah.
Thus the high water.
You're not allowed to discuss weather at these meetings, it sounds like.
Depressing.
Yeah. So, my point was, is that it's relatively good conditions now. So,
I will pose that question,
All right.
and
Thank you.
hopefully.
Good question.
response with everybody.
any others? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.